Within a year of the popular revolution, which brought the Marxist-Leninist Sandinista regime to power in Nicaragua, counter-revolutionary forces began to gather in neighboring Honduras and Costa Rica. The Nicaraguan Democratic Front, or FDN, under the military leadership of Colonel Enrique Bermudez, quickly became the largest armed faction in the resistance, commonly known as the Contras. Men of varied and often opposing political persuasions joined in the fight against the Marxist government. This report accompanies the FDN forces into Nicaragua, where they met an offensive by a reported 5 Sandinista battalions with moderate resistance. The patrol sets out from San Andres to Bocay on the Honduran-Nicaraguan border. Fresh from their rest in Honduras, the fighters are confident and well supplied with new ammunition and weapons. Intent on their mission, they move through the dry May jungle beside the Bocay River. The 35-mile journey follows the route the FDN hopes to establish as a major resupply corridor to their forward command post inside Nicaragua. At present, the air mobility of the Sandinista forces has prevented the FDN from setting up permanent bases inside the country and securing overland resupply routes. Crossing the Bocay River and continuing deeper into Jinotega province, the patrol encounters groups of 6 to 8 FDN fighters who maintain positions along the resupply route. The encampments are in areas that have been cleared by burning the jungle. They make little attempt at remaining covert or keeping heavy weapons camouflaged. Hilltop positions are easily identifiable, as most of the trees are cut down and all the vegetation removed to provide clear fields of fire. Little consideration is given to concealment or even shade from the burning sun. There are virtually no campesinos or country people still living in this part of Nicaragua. Many have been relocated to other areas by the Sandinista government. Others have fled to Honduras or Managua to escape the fighting. As a result, food is scarce and the existence Spartan. The daily meal usually consists of rice or beans, fried bananas and coffee. But even these basic commodities often run out, and the fighters go hungry. The Nicaraguan resistance is the only insurgent force in the world with the ability to airlift supplies to their combatants in the field. Aid provided by the United States Congress, along with donations from various private organizations and individuals, has paid for a fleet of aircraft, which at present drop over 600,000 pounds of supplies a month to an estimated 10,000 freedom fighters inside Nicaragua. However, political pressure from the Honduran and Costa Rican governments threatens the continued operation of the Contra Air Force from landing strips in their countries. It appears that the availability of these facilities is maintained only upon the insistence of the United States government. After an aerial resupply, the material has to be transported to secret caches and distribution points. Pack animals and porters are used in the mountainous central provinces. Canoes with outboard motors move stores and munitions along rivers in sparsely populated areas. In the northern region, the Mosquito Indians, expert navigators of the jungle rivers, ferry fighters and equipment during the night. But in areas where the Contras have nominal control, river movement takes place by day, despite the threat of aerial surveillance and interdiction. The man-pack artillery used inside Nicaragua by the freedom fighters consists of U.S. caliber mortars. The brand new 60mm mortars seem to be favored as they are light and maneuverable. The DSHK 12.7 heavy machine gun is used for both anti-aircraft and ground support fire. The deadly high-explosive rounds are handled easily by a female fighter acting as a feeder in the gun crew. Being heavy and unmanageable, the bipod and sights for this U.S. 81mm mortar were left behind, rendering the weapon virtually ineffective. A variety of personal weapons are carried, but the robust AKMs and AK-47s predominate. The weapons of communist origin are often new, as illustrated by this Soviet Druganov sniper's rifle. Section machine guns include American, European, and communist weapons, using a number of different caliber rounds. Commander Condor demonstrates an M41A3 surface-to-air missile. These anti-aircraft missiles are the only effective answer the freedom fighters have to the helicopter gunships given to the Sandinistas by the Soviets. The missile was so new it still had its confidential warning attached. But Commander Condor was well-trained and competent. 1 hour after this demonstration, this missile was successfully deployed against a Sandinista Mi-17 helicopter, destroying it completely. Many observers expect the Contra forces to launch a major offensive this year. Reports indicate that the majority of freedom fighters are now inside Nicaragua, despite increased Sandinista activity. The number of military incidents as a direct result of their presence has risen to over 300 per month. But it is unclear whether these are all initiated by the rebels. The commanders of the Contra forces foresee a protracted war of attrition, in which every day that their fighters are merely present in Nicaragua causes a progressive deterioration in the Sandinistas' ability to govern the country. As in any guerrilla war, the popular support of the local people is essential to success. But the sparse population in the main operational areas is hard-pressed to aid the Contras. Rationing and state controls imposed by the totalitarian government make it difficult to obtain supplies from commercial sources. Resupply from external depots is essential, but to do this by air is expensive. Limited resources dictate that secure overland routes must be established. Realizing this, the Sandinista military announced that it would launch a major offensive to disrupt the Contras' attempts to develop an overland supply corridor. The freedom fighters wait, preparing to put up a limited resistance before disappearing into the jungle. Some begin digging foxholes, having decided that their chances are better below ground level, although this is not common practice. The Sandinista attack came in the early morning. Commandant Mike Lima, officer commanding the defense and counterattacks, directs operations by radio from a command post in the hills. Firing from high ground, the heavy machine guns are used in support of the guerrillas fighting a running battle in the thick jungle undergrowth on the banks of the Bocay River. In the valley, a very young Contra directs his 60mm mortar fire at the advancing Sandinista troops, the fall of his rounds being observed and coordinated from the vantage point of the command post. Soon, the dreaded Soviet Hind helicopter gunships arrive. The Contras take cover as the deadly multi-barreled machine guns spit death at them. The helicopters flying between the hills are at the same altitude as the 12.7 machine gun position on the hill and are engaged briefly, but with little effect. The gun position on the hill is soon bracketed by effective enemy mortar fire, causing it to be temporarily abandoned. The following morning, Commandant Mike Lima explains the situation. At the moment, the battle is being fought along two flanks. The eastern flank is the Bocay River, and the western flank is the Coco River. Our troops are at the moment holding the Sandinista advance between these two rivers. Do you think you can maintain this position? Yes, we'll be able to hold it. What about ammunition? Have you sufficient? Well, at the moment, things are fairly slow, so I don't believe we have a problem. If we take it easy, we still have plenty for the offensive. At the moment, we believe we have 1 to 3 companies of Sandinistas, 400 or so men opposing us. And how many men do you have? Well, at the moment, things are about equal. They have about 400, and we have about 400. We think they probably will have more men behind them, but for the moment, well, we're about equal.
Okay.
After 5 days of fighting, the wounded wait to be airlifted out of the battle zone. Medical attention in the field is rudimentary, although the paramedics are well supplied with drugs and dressings. This close to the Honduran air bases, the Contras can afford to evacuate casualties by helicopter. Deeper into Nicaragua, this is impossible, and the mortality rate amongst the wounded is high. Of the original patrol seen setting out at the beginning of this report, only one was still operational at the end. Here, one of the youngest in the group suffers a serious gut wound in silence. Only 4 days before, fit and healthy, he shared a meal with his friends. At last, the medical evacuation helicopter arrives through the early morning mist. A Hughes 500. It is uncertain who it belongs to, but it is flown by an ex-Nicaraguan Air Force pilot who has been shot down on 2 previous occasions. The wounded are loaded by aid station staff and are soon on their way to proper medical attention at the FDN's well-equipped field hospital in Honduras. The battle is over. As in other guerrilla wars, the result is inconclusive for either side. The casualty ratios are roughly equal, and territory gained or lost is of no great consequence. But the major questions remain. Are the Contras able to free Nicaragua by armed struggle? And can the Nicaraguan resistance present a united political front and produce military successes that will engender the continued support of the United States?